Okay, folks, you'll probably hear the fan going on, and it's not because I'm crazy, maybe a little bit, but actually, I did a project with the girls, and so I'm letting the fan dry this glue. It's a little birdhouse thing that they did, so they got it for Christmas, and I basically did all of it. Let's just be real. But anyway, someone asked me this question, and I'm not going to do it as an Ask Her Shinoe because I think it's more just it's something that I would definitely do anyway. It's not like a one-off. I think Ask Her Shinois are kind of like a one-off. This question is, what are my predictions for housing and apartments in Tacoma in 2020? So first off, this is my first video of 2020. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And speaking of 2020, our 2020 was pretty good. We actually stayed up, Noelle and I stayed up and, had fun and everything else. The kids were in bed, obviously, but they stayed up till about 10 o'clock. And then after that, and we didn't have fireworks this year. It was too windy in Seattle. They typically do it off the Space Needle. It was just too windy. They were going to do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. We stayed up till 2. Nothing happened. We were at home. We didn't go there, obviously. And so weather, basically, first time in 30 years, I believe, they canceled the fireworks show. Not sure what happened here at Tacoma. Next year, we do have First Night Tacoma, which is pretty cool. I haven't been to it. Next year, possibly the old City Hall tower will be ringing in the new year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyhow, my predictions about housing and apartments in Tacoma. Now, I'm not sure if you're asking about the development or if you're asking about cost, because both of those are two completely different things, but I'm going to address both. When it comes to housing development, I believe you're going to see a lot more of it, obviously. Duh, right? So I think what we're seeing now is this point of kind of critical mass, where there's not enough development going on to meet the needs of people, and that's a no-brainer. But what I mean by that is that developers want to build these little tiny 8-story buildings, some of them 5-story buildings. And obviously it's their money. I mean, I don't have that type of money at all. So I get it. It's their money. They can do whatever they want. However, those little mid-rise buildings really don't work well because you're only housing a few people at a time. Whereas when you start getting into the buildings that they put up in Bellevue and in Seattle, you do a lot better. One of the big problems that we're having, it's not just here, but it's everywhere, is people want to build basic stuff but charge an arm and a leg for it. And it's not worth it. So you're seeing that. Basically a lot of greed. If you look in Seattle, that's a lot of greed. You see it here in Tacoma, a lot of greed. People want to charge huge amounts of money for apartments, retail space, condos, houses. And to be honest with you, they're just not worth that. The value's not there. And typically it's usually about half of that. But developers want to be greedy about it. So what that does is it causes more social ills than good things. This is just my honest opinion. And it doesn't help them either because, yeah, they get a few people in there, but you're pushing more and more and more and more people out. And a lot of those spaces sit empty for a long time. And these developers are like, well, whatever. They don't mind it sitting empty. To me, there should be things that the city does. And of course, I understand it's a free market economy and that type of thing, capitalism, all that. I get it. But it really makes the city look bad, makes the neighborhoods look bad whenever you have all this vacant space because no one can afford it, right? And the space is not all that, typically. And the spaces in these apartments are not in well-known areas, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. If they were on a very highly traveled road or a main thoroughfare, that's one thing. But some of these are kind of tucked away and the prices just don't make sense. You see that throughout this entire region. You see that all over the country, really all over the world. So it's a major problem. I think that the city should do more, obviously, in terms of developers, basically telling them, you need to add more units. and that type of thing, right? I'm okay with not enough parking because I think that as long as the city focuses more on mass transit downtown, I think they should do more downtown for sure, and as well as outside of downtown. But as long as they focus on that, that's a little bit different. But they need to add more units. With that said, I think you're going to see a lot more development going on. Again, mid-rise buildings, typical. There's probably a dozen or more that are online that should be breaking ground this year in the Tacoma area. There's a few that need to finish up. They're still working on it. Don't forget the town center is still cranking, slowly but cranking. They're working on the inside of that building. As you recall, the first section of that building, they have 5 retail spaces down below. All of those are super expensive, obviously. And then you have residential spaces up above. It's a 7-story building, I believe, something like that. So they're working on that section. They're working on the interior portions of it. So there's still more development to come. I think they're probably going to break ground on the second part of that, probably this year. So you're going to see more and more and more and more happen. You're going to see additional rehabbing of buildings too, because it's just a lot more affordable. You buy a building, you fix up the inside of it. It's a lot easier, a lot cheaper sometimes than rebuilding an entire or just a whole new rebuild. So until you get into properties like the old Elks Lodge, which is what the Minimans have, or the old City Hall, which is what Search Tacoma is taking over, when you get into those old ancient buildings, it becomes much more expensive than just building from the ground up a lot of times, because you have so many different issues. They were totally different building codes back then. There's the soil conditions. They couldn't really test for that stuff back in the day, so you have to stabilize it, seismic activity stuff. It's a headache. And then you have to bring everything up to code. And of course, there's so many different weird codes, many of which aren't even needed, but there are some that are definitely needed. And so you have to address them all, and it becomes pricey. This is not what this video is about. It's not about ranting and raving. It's just the facts, right? So you're seeing a lot of that infill stuff. But I think when I say critical mass, I think we're also at the point of where you're going to start seeing taller and taller buildings, because the cost to build here as opposed to Seattle is the same. The prices for rents, and this is where we're going to the rent part, for rents are also getting close to Seattle prices. Not there yet, obviously, but it's getting to that point of where the prices here are starting to go up and they're trying to catch up with everybody else. So with that, housing prices, as far as houses, homes, are also going up pretty fast. They're steady going up. There's room for them to go up, not just in certain sections of the city, in the entire city. You know, if you look at the Puget Sound region, not counting Olympia, but if you look at the Puget Sound region, and I don't know if Olympia is included in that or not, but pretty much Tacoma is the cheapest housing market. We're cheaper than Everett by a little bit. We're much cheaper than Bellevue, much cheaper than Seattle or any other city out there. Much, much more cheaper. And you have more, not counting Bellevue or Seattle, but you have much more of a city vibe in Tacoma. And so it used to be that there's all these reasons as to why Tacoma was cheaper. Well, you know, there's crime, and well, there's this and that. All those things, while they still exist, are by far less than what they were. And you're starting to see the Golden Child, Seattle, suffer some of the same things that they used to criticize Tacoma for, right? So people are looking for the best deal, and it's starting to slip away pretty quickly, right? Now, when people are saying what's going to be the average price for homes down here, I'm saying probably close to $400,000. Could you find something cheaper than that? Yeah, you could. You definitely could. But now it's where homes that are in the 260s need work. It used to be homes in like the 170s you can find down here. You need to put some work into it. Now it's $100,000, almost more, almost $100,000 more than what it was for you to find a home and for you to move into it, and you have to fix it up. You see what I'm saying? Now there's homes that are now in the 260s, 275s that are fixer-uppers here in Tacoma. So yeah, you can find them, but if you want to find a home where you don't have to, you know, basically do some pretty good remodeling, you're looking at homes that are probably approaching 400,000 if they're not already there. So it's becoming more of an issue here as time goes on. There's also a lot of folks moving here from Seattle in a much more faster clip because prices there in Seattle are starting to take back off again. So in Seattle, they're starting to see the prices rise again. So you're seeing up there, people are trying to buy quick because they're seeing the trends. Once spring comes, you're going to see another bump. Typically, you're going to see another bump in terms of rents. You're going to see another bump in terms of housing prices. It's just the natural curve of things. Right now, it's wintertime, so people typically aren't looking for homes. They do here. But typically, when it's bad weather, you're not going to have a whole lot of shopping. It's right after Christmas, but tax season's coming up. So spring is the gravy time because people are getting their income tax check. The weather starts to look a little bit better. It's after the holidays, and so you have a good chance of people doing that. And for a lot of people, school, their children, if they have kids, their school is going to be letting out for the summer months. So a lot of folks start looking very heavy around spring. Prices go up at that point in time. So I think that the folks who have, and I've had several people talk about moving down to Tacoma, but you have some that want to move up north, and that's great. But this covers the entire region. You're going to start seeing prices go up quite a bit pretty fast, and I think it's going to hold. Even in Seattle, I know in Tacoma it's going to hold. I know up in Everett and places like that, Bellevue, those are going to hold. Seattle slipped a little bit because the value that they were claiming just didn't make sense. And so I think that, again, it was a lot of speculation. So you saw that correction, and it affected a lot of King County. But I think now what you're seeing is probably more of what the real prices are. And I see that that's going to continue just based on things that I've seen and just knowledge of it. I think that you're going to start seeing more and more of that. When to buy? Well, soon. If you can buy now, buy now. Because I don't think you're going to see things go down. Rent prices are going to continue to go up too. I mean, it doesn't take, I think anyone can tell you, yeah, the prices are going to definitely go up, but I'm telling you, it's going to go up pretty fast, and it's going to be unattainable. There are a lot of people saying, I'm looking for rent prices this amount. It wouldn't surprise me now if the average apartment price now here is at $1,500. It wouldn't surprise me. I haven't seen numbers yet. But it wouldn't surprise me if they're hovering around that point. It's getting there. So anyhow, hope that answers your question. I would say definitely buy now. Spring is going to be a tough one. To be honest with you, spring and summer months, it's going to be tough. That's going to be when you're going to start seeing a lot of heavy competition. You're going to see bidding wars. You're going to see a lot of speculation probably still. So I would say that would be a problem. More the places that are going to be the more difficult to attain are going to be your northeast neighborhoods and east side communities. So Bellevue, Snohomish, all those. Only because there's a lot of people looking for those areas. Woodinville, a lot of people are looking in those areas. So it's going to be a lot more harder. The competition is going to be a lot more stiff. You're even seeing it in some of these other little island areas. And even in Kitsap County, you're starting to see prices just shoot through the roof because a lot of people are looking outside of Seattle. It's becoming much more of a commuter city than ever in its history. So you're going to start seeing a lot of prices just in the entire area go up, even down in Olympia, which Olympia is a little over 60 miles from Seattle. So that should give you an idea that prices there are not far behind that of Tacoma's. Anyhow, hope that answers your question. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.